Hello everybody, it's Lindsay Setchell here from HM and HM International School of Horse and Hoof Care, and welcome back to another episode of Lindsay's It's Not Rocket Science when it comes to horse and hoof care. Now today we're going to be talking about, or going to start a series of lessons about winter laminitis. Winter laminitis. Now, it's cold up here in the Northern Hemisphere, pretty chilly, I can tell you that. And of course, down in the Southern Hemisphere, it's not so cold right now, and they're heading towards summer for Christmas. But here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's pretty cold. But soon, in the Southern Hemisphere, it's going to be cold. So if you're living in the Southern Hemisphere, this is probably going to be useful too. Now, during this series of lessons about winter laminitis, we're going to be talking about why horses and ponies, equines, get laminitis in the winter, and we're also going to be talking about things that affect them, like grass, frosty grass. We're going to be talking about temperature regulation in the hoof. We're also going to be talking about how we can help these ponies and why they get so sore, or horses as well, and donkeys, and why they get so sore when the ground goes hard, and what you can do about it, and some of the things that are going to predispose that equine to having sore feet in the winter time. So over these next few lessons, that's what we're going to be talking about. And in today's lesson, we're going to be talking about something called AV Shunts. And these are clever mechanisms in the horse's hoof that enables the horse to regulate temperature in the hoof. And for us too, we have them in our bodies, and we're able to regulate temperature, keep our body temperature at that right level, at that equilibrium that we need it to be. And the horse's hoof is no different. And in order for the horse, the equine, to do that, they have something called an AV shunt. And we're going to be talking about that. So without further ado, let's get into it. Talking about winter laminitis. Winter laminitis, let's leave that up there so we know what we're doing. And this is lesson number 1. And this is about the AV shunts. So what on earth are these? Well, these are really clever mechanisms in the horse's hoof. And the reason that they're there is all about temperature control. Because the hoof, just like the rest of the body, needs to be able to control temperature. It's important because as the environment changes, it's going to get hot out there, or it's going to get really cold. And when that happens, the hoof needs to respond. And the way it does that is through these very, very special mechanisms called the AV shunts. So what are they? Okay, so here's a quick lesson on circulation. Circulation. This is what we're going to talk about right now. Circulation. So we have a heart, right? And we have oxygenated blood that goes to the rest of the body from the heart. And this oxygenated blood is delivered in arteries that go down to very tiny arterioles. So we have an artery. Oops. And then we've got arterioles, and they are small arteries. These are these little tiny ones here. And then they go along and they go into what we call a tiny capillary bed. And these are really, really tiny blood vessels. And these are the ones that where the oxygen and the nutrients diffuse out of these vessels into the tissues. This is in your body, this is in the hoof, this is the circulatory system. That's how it works. It's taking oxygen and nutrients away from the heart, going towards the cells and the tissues in the foot and everywhere else in the body, and delivering it to the tissues through this process here. But then, once the cells have all done their job and everything's been working fine, the cells then start to produce waste products, CO2 and waste products from the cells working. And then they have to send that back through other little tiny vessels. So they're going, so that's coming back into those vessels. And this is all of this is the capillary bed. And that's delivering all that amazing nutrients, etc., and oxygen to the cells and the tissues. So when it's done that, it comes back into these little vessels, which then go into tiny vessels called venules. Here they are, venules, which then go into bigger vessels called veins. And that's how it works. It's simple. That's the circulatory highway. That's how cells and tissues get all of their nutrients and the oxygen. It goes down from a larger tube to a smaller tube to even smaller one. Then that's where it all diffuses. And then it comes back in the waste products, back into these very small vessels. And then on the way back to the heart, it goes through a small vessel called a venule and then into bigger vessels called the veins. And that's how it works. It's very, very, very clever, and that's your circulatory system. And that's happening all the time, supplying our muscles, supplying our tissues and our cells with all the things that they need to work. Now, the AV shunts, I'm just gonna get rid of this for a second, because otherwise I'm not gonna have enough room. So what does the AV shunt do? Well, an AV shunt is where it bypasses that capillary bed. So I'm just going to draw that capillary bed in for you again so you can remember. Let's get that drawn back in because we took it away. So that's delivering and removing that oxygen and those nutrients, and that, and that's the capillary bed. Capillary bed. Okay, that's this bit. Now with an AV shunt, it bypasses that bed. So here's the AV shunt. And it does this in response to the body temperature. And it also does it in response to other things too, because it's quite clever. And they've now found that it's responding to vasoconstriction and vasodilation, constricting and dilating of blood vessels. They've also found that that's in relation to rising insulin levels and glucose, etc. But we're just going to be talking here about temperature. And what happens is that instead of those arterioles, those tiny little arteries or tiny little vessels that are attached to the arteries as they get smaller and smaller, those arterioles are connected to venules. Here we go. Directly. So they're not actually coming in here and going out here from the capillary bed. They totally bypass the capillary bed. And this is a mechanism that is used in the hoof and, like I said, around the body to regulate this temperature. So let's say it's getting cold outside. So we don't want to lose too much heat out of the hoof. We want to keep that heat in because we want to make sure that the hoof keeps that temperature, because all those processes inside the hoof, the enzymes, everything has to all be working at a certain set temperature. So the AV shunts open up. They open up, they bypass the capillary bed, and they bypass that the blood bypasses the capillary bed, so no more heat, or it reduces the amount of heat that is lost in the hoof. And then conversely, when the hoof is at a temperature where it's starting to get warmer and the outside is starting to get warmer, then these can close down and more blood can be taken to the capillary bed, so that heat can then be lost out of the hoof. It's a really clever function. It's a mechanism that goes on all the time, and these are very special little structures all over the horse's hoof. And these protect the lamina. They protect the lamina so that they don't get overloaded and so that the temperature doesn't affect them. So we're trying to keep that equilibrium. Remember when we talked about, in a few lessons ago, we talked about something called feedback. This is all about feedback. I told you that organisms all work on feedback. So when temperature drops, they have to respond, and when temperature goes up, they respond again, always trying to keep the temperature at a set level. And that's what these AV shunts do. And that's really all you need to know. But one of the problems with laminitis, and a pony that has, or an equine that has been having laminitis frequently, constantly having laminitis, it's gone through laminitis chronic, it's been chronic for a long time, and it's been dipping in and out of acute attacks, and then we come to winter time and the horse goes really sore. One of the theories behind this is because these AV shunts are damaged. So the horse now cannot regulate the temperature inside the foot, and the knock-on effect of that is actually quite huge for the lamina, for the enzymes, for everything that's going on inside the foot, all these very clever metabolic processes that are going on, the molecules get affected, and so consequently the equine potentially is going to have issues in the foot because they can no longer regulate their temperature, and they can't do that because these have been damaged. So one of the things that we have to do to try and avoid this is to avoid our ponies and our horses, our donkeys and our equines having laminitis over and over and over again, because they're damaging vital mechanisms within the foot, which is going to cause them problems as they go through into the winter, and in fact all year round. So that was lesson 1 about the AV shunts. I hope that helped. There's an awful lot more to it than this, but this is the basis of it and how it actually works. So there's a warning sign for you guys. Let's not have our ponies, our horses and our equines dipping in and out of laminitis, because it comes with consequences, and those consequences are continued damage inside the foot, and one of them is these AV shunts. And if we continue to let our horses and our ponies and our donkeys dip in and out of laminitis, that is something that is a real possibility, and we don't know how they repair. That's never really been looked at properly. So, bit of a warning there. Don't let your horses and your ponies and your donkeys dip in and out of laminitis. Okay, that was the end of this lesson. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. See you then. Bye-bye.